Welcome back to Sapper Woodworking. So in today's video, we have two purposes. One, we're going to show you how this walnut vessel was made. Actually, we'll show you the second half of it. I don't have a whole lot of video of the initial stages of construction, but we'll show you the back half of how this was made, and we'll also give you a preview of this cherry segmented bowl with walnut base that I will be giving away to a lucky Sapper Woodworking subscriber in a future video, probably the next one I post or the next one after that. You can be eligible to win this bowl for free. You just need to be a Sapper Woodworking subscriber, and you'll need to answer a question that's presented in the video, and we'll give you other terms and conditions for make sure you're eligible to win this bowl absolutely free. And this is the bowl that will present the second half of the steps how this was made. I don't have any video on the initial stages of construction. I have several other videos that show how the woodworker goes from a piece of wood to the segmented ring that these segmented bowls are made out of. So I'll have a couple links down in the description, and you can go look at those videos if you want to see how we get to the starting point of this video. So stay tuned and tell us what you think. If you like the content and the information that's presented in the video, please consider subscribing. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. And as usual, thanks for tuning in. So I have arrived at the point where I'm going to be gluing up my segmented rings to create my vessel or bowl blank. And there's different types of jigs that you could make where you could help line up the rings in a perfectly vertical manner. I usually just use a couple cabinet clamps and kind of eyeball the rings from one level to the next, and I usually have pretty good results in getting the rings pretty straight. And you can see here as I'm spinning that, I'm a little bit off on the right side of that blank. That's wobbling just a little bit much, but I do have about 1.25 inches thickness on those pieces, so I've got plenty of material to work with to round the bowl appropriately, even though it's currently wobbling a bit. So at this point I'm just using a 1/2 inch bowl gouge, and I'm starting the initial rounding process, and you can certainly hear the wood wrap up against that tool, making that thumping, rattling noise. And that will slowly go away as more material is removed and the bowl gets rounder and rounder. As with a lot of my turning projects, and especially with the segmented bowl pieces, I don't have a written down pattern that I start off with. I just kind of have an idea of what I want the bowl shape to look like. And I do leave, as I mentioned earlier, enough thickness in the piece that I can kind of manipulate that a little bit and play around with it. And once I get the outside completely round, I'll move on to the inside, get that part round, and then I'll kind of decide exactly what the final shape of the bowl or the vessel would look like. Now in this shot, we're getting a better idea of what the outside of the bowl is going to look like, as well as the completely unfinished inside. And I've always had limitations in my shop with getting with just using regular hand tools and getting deep inside of a bowl or a vessel. So I invested in a Jameson hollowing tool, and hollowing tool is an excellent system to safely use a tool deep inside of a vessel or a bowl. The system essentially removes any twisting force, which is common on the tool if you're going to be reaching over the end of the tool rest. That is typically found on a bowl. It effectively creates a second tool rest behind your primary tool rest, and then the balance of that, as well as the shape of the rigging that's captured inside of those green bars that you can see, that will remove any twisting or torquing force that's on your tool, which creates a safe environment for hollowing out any types of vessels. Now in this particular project, I'm not going to have any problem making a good judgment call on the final thickness of the walls of this vessel, but this Jameson hollowing system does come with a laser light that enables you to rig up the laser a certain distance away from your cutting head tool, and that will give you an idea of how thick your wall is, even if your vessel happens to have a really small opening on top and you're kind of doing blind cuts inside of the project. Just makes for a really safe and easy way to get a consistent bowl thickness. So I was asked recently why it's so important if you're making such a project, in this case kind of a tall vessel, why it's really important to have the thickness of the vessel to be consistent from top to bottom. And that's because even though the project will be sealed and finished, moisture will still cause the wood to expand and contract over time. And if you're able to keep that thickness of the wall consistent, that expansion and contraction will be consistent and will be much less likely to crack a glue joint, because these segmented projects have an absolute ton of glue joinery. So having a consistent thickness will help, maybe make that project last. So I ended up just using a standard jam chuck that I have, and that's to flip the bowl around and mount it against the tailstock and just trim the bottom of the bowl smooth. And that was the video I just completed showing. And now I moved on to, which is always the best part of the project, which is the finishing. And I've used some straight up linseed oil here just to pop that grain. And this particular wood is of course walnut, but it's also sapwood walnut, so it's the part of the tree that's growing out towards the bark section. And in walnut in particular, you can have all different types of colors in that kind of sapwood transition. You can have purples and browns and grays. So I had saved a bunch of pieces that I wanted to put together and create an entire segment and bowl of kind of sapwood transitional pieces, and it was really turned out nice. There's some purples and some grays there, and that linseed oil really makes it shine. So after applying that linseed oil, I waited maybe 2 weeks in this case for it to set and cure, and I put a couple coats of just straight up simple spray-on lacquer. And when that dried about 48 hours, I just took the vessel to my buffing wheels and buffed on a nice coat of wax or two. And we ended up with what I think is a really cool looking project. I like the color variation, and I'm pretty happy how that shape turned out. So, if you like what you've heard and seen in the video, please again consider subscribing. It really helps us, with the YouTube rankings and gets our content out to more individuals. So again, appreciate watching, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.